Chosen one, what if you are not one miracle away from everything changing? What if you are one clear decision away? You have survived things that should have made you quit. You kept praying when nothing moved. You kept showing up when no one understood why you still believed. But survival teaches strange habits. It teaches you how to expect delay. It teaches you how to brace before good news arrives. It teaches you how to stay ready for disappointment, even when the door in front of you is finally different. That is where this message begins. Not with another promise that something big is coming. You have heard enough promises. This is about the moment when waiting becomes so familiar that movement starts to feel dangerous and caution begins to sound like wisdom. You can miss something important without anyone stealing it from you. No enemy has to block the road. Sometimes all it takes is arriving exhausted and uncertain at the exact moment when clarity matters most. Look at the small signs. You reread the same message and still do not answer. You save an opportunity and tell yourself you will return tomorrow. You know a conversation needs to happen, but you keep asking for one more sign before you begin. There are 3 ways people miss a threshold. The first looks like caution. The second looks like spirituality. The third looks like ordinary tiredness. And the third is the one most people never learn to recognize until it has shaped their decisions. The first distinction is simple. Caution asks questions so it can reach a decision. Fear asks questions so it can avoid one. Caution gathers enough truth to move. Fear keeps gathering because movement itself feels unsafe. Chosen one, you may have trained yourself to survive uncertainty so well that uncertainty now feels like home. You know how to wait. You know how to endure. You know how to keep believing with no visible evidence. But what happens when endurance is no longer the assignment? What happens when the next step is not surviving another closed door, but recognizing an opening without immediately explaining it away? That is a different kind of faith. So notice where you have been circling. Notice what decision keeps returning. Notice the place where you keep saying you need more clarity, while refusing to use the clarity you already have. This is not about forcing an answer. It is about becoming honest about the difference between waiting and hiding. One can be faithful. The other can quietly become a habit that steals years without ever looking dramatic. And before we go deeper, make one simple declaration. Not for performance, not to prove anything, just to interrupt the pattern for one moment. Say it quietly if you need to. I choose clarity. Because the danger at the final mile is rarely that you suddenly become weak. The danger is that old survival reflexes keep speaking after the season that created them has started to change. And that brings us to the first reason people can be closer than ever, yet feel more confused than before. The closer a decision gets to something you deeply care about, the more emotional weight it carries. That weight changes what you notice. It changes what you fear. It can make an open door look suspicious, simply because you have spent so long learning what closed doors feel like. Chosen one, the first danger is something I call the last mile blindness. It happens when the thing you care about becomes so emotionally important that your mind stops treating it like an ordinary choice. You can think clearly about someone else's life. You can see their patterns in minutes. You can tell them what conversation they need to have, what boundary they need to set, and what opportunity they are talking themselves out of. Then your own decision appears, and everything changes. Suddenly, every option carries weight. Every possible mistake feels expensive. Your mind starts scanning for danger instead of possibility, because the outcome matters too much to feel neutral. That does not automatically mean you lack faith. It does not mean God stopped guiding you, and it does not mean the door is wrong. Sometimes the pressure comes from how deeply you care about getting this one decision right. That is why closeness can create confusion. The closer you get, the more your mind starts calculating consequences. What if I choose wrong? What if I trust again and get hurt? What if I finally receive this and cannot carry it? Those questions feel responsible. Some of them are responsible, but responsibility has a stopping point. When questions no longer help you see more clearly and only keep you from choosing, caution has quietly become fear. This is the first breakthrough. Closeness itself can create pressure. The pressure is not proof that you are lost. It may simply mean the decision has become emotionally significant enough to activate every old memory connected to risk. You may have learned how to endure disappointment. You may have learned how to function without support. You may have learned how to keep moving while expecting nothing. Those abilities protected you in one season, but if you carry every survival rule into a new season, protection can become limitation. You can reject help because you are used to carrying everything. You can mistrust peace because struggle feels more familiar. This is why you should not shame yourself for hesitation. Shame only adds more noise. What you need is enough quiet to separate what is actually dangerous from what is merely unfamiliar. Imagine waking up tomorrow and not negotiating with yourself for the first hour. You know the one conversation that matters. You know the one task that needs your attention. You know the one decision that deserves an honest answer. You are not rushing. You are not forcing certainty. You simply have enough internal space to notice what is true before fear begins writing a second story over it. That is what clarity can feel like. And there is a practical test you can use. Ask yourself one question. Is this concern helping me reach a decision or helping me postpone one? Do not answer quickly. Let the question expose the pattern, because fear is only the first way people miss a threshold. The second is more difficult to notice because it can sound spiritual. It can use the language of patience, timing, signs, and discernment while quietly keeping you in the same place. That is where many sincere people get trapped. They are not refusing guidance. They are waiting for guidance to remove every risk before they move. But real discernment does not always eliminate uncertainty. Sometimes it gives you enough truth for the next faithful step and asks you to walk before the rest of the road becomes visible. Chosen one. The second way people miss a threshold is more deceptive. It does not look like fear. It looks like patience. It sounds careful. It even sounds spiritual. You tell yourself you are waiting for confirmation. Then another confirmation comes, and you ask for one more. You say you need peace before acting, but what you really mean is that you want all discomfort to disappear first. You pray again. You watch another message. You ask another person what they think. You search for another sign. None of those things are wrong by themselves, but they become a hiding place when they replace the decision you already know is waiting. Discernment seeks enough clarity to obey. Avoidance seeks unlimited confirmation, so it never has to decide. That difference is small on the surface, but it changes everything. More revelation is not always more readiness. Sometimes, more information only gives fear more material to analyze. You can know 10 more principles, hear 10 more teachings, and still remain exactly where you were because the issue is no longer knowledge. At some point, waiting for perfect certainty becomes a way of refusing responsibility. God can guide you without removing every unknown. Faith can be sincere without giving you a complete map. So ask yourself this: what decision have you been calling unclear because you do not like the cost of making it? Maybe the answer is not dramatic. Maybe it is one email, one boundary, one application, one honest conversation. And there is another layer most people never examine. What if your difficulty is not only spiritual hesitation? What if the state of your mind itself is making clear decisions harder than they need to be? Over the last several decades, researchers have studied how different parts of the brain cooperate, specialize, and exchange information. Some of that work became famous because it changed how science understood the divided and connected functions of the human brain. Later in this message, I am going to return to one line of research connected to a Nobel Prize, because it raises a practical question that fits everything we have been discussing, not a mystical question, a very human one. What if the signal has not disappeared? What if the receiver has simply been operating under more strain than you realized? Then the important decision appears, the one carrying emotional weight, and you expect the same tired mind to become instantly still, precise, and fearless, because the moment matters. That expectation is not always realistic. A sincere heart can still be mentally overloaded. A faithful person can still be cognitively tired. Spiritual commitment does not make you immune to exhaustion. This is why the next part matters so much. We are going to separate two things people often confuse: the presence of guidance and the condition in which guidance is received. Because if those are not the same thing, then your fog may not mean you have been abandoned. It may mean you need to understand the receiver before you keep blaming the signal. And once you understand that, the question changes. You stop asking, "Why is nothing reaching me?" You begin asking, "What condition am I in when something important finally arrives?" Chosen one. This is where the receiver problem becomes visible. You can receive a message and still be too overloaded to use it. You can understand what needs to change and still feel frozen when the moment to act finally arrives. That is not the same as rebellion. It is not always lack of faith. Sometimes the mind has been carrying so much noise that even a clear signal lands inside a crowded room. Notice how this shows up. You pray, and for a moment you know what matters. Then 10 minutes later, the certainty is buried under notifications, responsibilities, old fears, and the opinions of everyone around you. You write down an insight. You promise yourself you will act on it. Then the day fills up, the thought gets pushed aside, and by evening, you are back inside the same loop you were trying to leave. This is the receiver problem. Receiving information and being internally organized enough to use it are not the same thing. A signal can be clear while the receiver is strained. That distinction matters because it removes unnecessary shame. You stop calling yourself lazy every time you hesitate. You stop assuming every foggy day is evidence that God has withdrawn direction from your life. Instead, you begin asking a better question. What condition am I in when the important signal arrives? Am I rested enough to notice it? Am I calm enough to evaluate it? Am I present enough to remember what I already know? Take a moment and notice your body. Do not change anything yet. Notice your jaw. Notice your shoulders. Notice whether your breathing is shallow, rushed, or tight. Now notice the speed of your thoughts. Are they moving toward the decision or scattering around every possible consequence? You do not need to judge what you find. This is simply information. Your body can carry tension while your spirit remains sincere. Your mind can be tired while your values remain intact. Clarity is not a moral reward for being good enough. It is also important to say this plainly. A clear mind does not create the will of God. It does not force an outcome. It does not guarantee that every opportunity in front of you is meant to be accepted. But clarity can help you participate more deliberately in your own choices. It can help you separate fear from evidence. It can help you notice when you are repeating an old pattern instead of responding to what is actually happening now. This is where many people make a painful mistake. They keep asking for a louder signal when what they may need is less internal noise. They keep demanding more signs while ignoring the condition from which every sign is being interpreted. And that creates a strange cycle. More information arrives. More information creates more analysis. More analysis creates more fatigue. Then fatigue makes the original decision feel even harder. Chosen one, you do not always need more input. Sometimes you need enough internal order to finally use what has already reached you. But even that is not the deepest layer. Because there is another reason a person can see the right direction and still pull away from it. What if part of you does not actually feel safe receiving what you asked for? What if the fog is only one part of the story? What if beneath the hesitation there is an older loyalty, a loyalty to what is familiar, even when what is familiar has been painful? That is the next threshold. And it explains why some people pray for change, recognize change when it comes, and then quietly recreate the very life they said they were ready to leave. Chosen one. This is where the story becomes more personal. You can say you want a new life and still feel safer inside an old pattern. You can pray for expansion while your habits quietly protect the version of you that learned how to survive without it. That does not mean your desire was fake. It means familiarity has power. The nervous system often prefers what it recognizes, even when what it recognizes has been painful. So, the healthy relationship appears, and you become suspicious. The serious opportunity arrives, and you start finding reasons to delay. Someone respects you, and part of you waits for the betrayal that has not happened. You call it discernment. Sometimes it is. But sometimes you are not running from the blessing. You are running toward familiarity. That is one of the hardest truths to accept, because familiar pain can feel safer than unfamiliar promise. Pain you already know has rules. You know how to brace for it. You know how to function inside it. A new season asks different questions. Can you receive help without feeling weak? Can you be seen without expecting punishment? Can you succeed without apologizing for becoming different from the people who knew the old version of you? This is where self-sabotage often begins. Not with a dramatic decision, with a delay, a missed reply, a conversation postponed, a small retreat that feels harmless because it looks temporary. Then the old identity returns. I am the one who waits. I am the one who gets overlooked. I am the one who almost makes it. And every repeated sentence becomes easier to believe because your behavior keeps producing evidence for it. Chosen one, you are not required to shame that old version of yourself. That version learned how to keep you moving when things were uncertain. But survival skills are not meant to become permanent identity. The more mature meaning of being chosen is not that every door belongs to you. It is that you become willing to stop rehearsing an old identity when new responsibility arrives. Imagine an opportunity entering your life tomorrow. You read the message. You feel the old rush of fear. But this time, you do not disappear into analysis. You pause. You breathe, you look at what is true, you ask what the moment actually requires, and then you answer from clarity instead of from the memory of every door that once closed. That is the shift. Not perfect confidence, not zero fear. A different relationship with fear. And now we reach the missing piece, because you can understand every pattern we have named. You can recognize fear, familiarity, and avoidance, yet still wake tomorrow with the same fog. Why does insight sometimes remain insight instead of becoming movement? Why can you know exactly what you should do and still feel as though the connection between knowing and acting has gone dim? The answer is not another motivational sentence. It begins with the condition from which the decision is being made. Earlier, I asked you to hold one question. What if the signal has not disappeared, but the receiver has been operating under more strain than you realized? We are finally close to answering it, and when we do, the spiritual and practical sides of this message will stop looking like two separate conversations. Chosen one. Earlier, I asked whether the signal could remain clear while the receiver was strained. We waited to answer, because a solution only makes sense after the shape of the problem becomes visible. Here is the plain version. Stress can make important decisions harder. Familiar fear can keep you circling. Mental overload can turn one next step into 10 competing possibilities. That is the why. The what is simple. You need less noise, better internal organization, and enough clarity to evaluate the next step without demanding certainty about the entire road. And the WHO is the person who has done inner work, yet still feels fragmented when something important arrives. The insight is real. But insight is not movement. You know what has been happening. The question is what can support a clearer state from which to act. There is a line of neuroscience made famous through Doctor Roger Sperry, who received the Nobel Prize in 1981 for research involving specialized functions of the two cerebral hemispheres. That research does not prove any commercial product works, but it helped establish an idea: the two sides of the brain have specialized functions and communication between them matters. The creators of a digital audio program built their product around that broader idea of coordination. Their materials call the approach neural sync technology, delivered through an 8-minute targeted auditory sequence. Before I name it, consider two stories the company presents as individual experiences, not guarantees. A woman from California described years of mental fog and the feeling that life was simply happening to her. According to the product materials, after using the routine consistently, she reported feeling clearer and more connected in daily life. She described the change as if an internal channel had opened again. A man from Texas described another problem. He was carrying work, family, and constant responsibility, while his thinking felt dull and scattered. The company says he later reported sharper thinking and less of the fog he had treated as normal. These are personal accounts, not guarantees. The program is called the Genius Switch. It is a digital auditory sequence created by a team led by Doctor Daniel Barone in New York. According to the product information, the routine takes 8 minutes a day. You use headphones, close your eyes, relax, and listen. It is presented as a low-effort practice built around hemisphere synchronization. The company positions it as different from ordinary meditation tracks or generic sound products. Their claim is that the sequence uses their neural sync technology and a whole brain activation concept. This is not for everyone. It is for the chosen one who understands that spiritual discernment and practical mental clarity do not have to compete. A tool cannot tell you the will of God. It cannot make the decision for you. But if a routine supports a clearer mental state for you, that may help you respond with more intention. According to the product file, the listed price was $49, with an offer price of $39. The package also included 4 bonuses and lifetime access. Those bonuses were a guided visualization, a grocery shopping guide, a classic manifestation book, and a 5 habits infographic. The offer was also presented with a money-back guarantee. Pricing and availability can change, so confirm the current terms on the page before deciding. Do not choose it because this message made you afraid. Consider it only if the routine fits what you actually need. The product materials say the official page is the verified source, and that page is linked in the description and pinned comment. Read the details. Look at the terms, decide from clarity, and remember the deeper current. The tool does not replace God. It does not replace sleep, medical care, responsibility, prayer, or obedience. It is only an optional tool. The deeper work is still yours, because even with a clearer receiver, one question remains. When the next honest step becomes visible, will you finally say yes? Chosen one. Everything we have uncovered leads to one final question. What do you actually do when clarity begins to return? You do not need 10 more signs. You do not need a perfect map. You need a way to recognize the next faithful step. This is what I call the final yes. It is not reckless action. It is not forcing an outcome. It is the moment when you stop demanding certainty and start asking better questions. First, ask yourself, is it true? Is the fear in front of you supported by what is actually happening? Or is an old story speaking louder than the present moment? Truth does not always remove fear, but it gives fear the right size. Second, ask, is it mine? Not every open door is your assignment. Not every request deserves your yes. Not every opportunity belongs to your path. Clarity includes knowing what is yours to carry and what you can release without guilt. Third, ask, What is the smallest faithful action? Maybe it is one email. Maybe it is one boundary. Maybe it is one application. Maybe it is one honest conversation you have delayed because you wanted the entire future explained first. This is where many people get stuck. They think faith means being certain about the outcome. It does not. Faith can mean acting truthfully without controlling what happens next. So do not ask for certainty. Ask a harder question. What decision would still be honest even if I could not guarantee the outcome? Let that question sit with you, because the final yes is not about saying yes to everything. Sometimes your faithful step is no. Sometimes it is rest. Sometimes it is leaving. Sometimes it is staying long enough to have the conversation you kept avoiding. Clarity is not speed. Clarity is alignment between what you know, what you value, and what you are willing to do next. And this is where the primary question from the beginning finally closes. How can someone be so close and still miss it? They can mistake fear for caution. They can disguise avoidance as spirituality. They can remain too mentally crowded to use the guidance they already have. But once you see those patterns, the threshold changes. You are no longer standing there unconsciously. You can name what is happening. You can pause. You can evaluate. You can choose. For the person who felt something shift when we discussed mental clarity earlier, the resource I described is still in the description and pinned comment. Read the details, only if it genuinely fits what you need. No pressure. The deeper decision still belongs to you, because a tool cannot give you courage. A tool cannot choose integrity. A tool cannot say the final yes for you. That part belongs to you. And maybe that is what this entire season has been preparing. Not a version of you who knows everything before moving, but a version who can recognize enough truth to take the next faithful step without abandoning yourself. You do not need the whole road tonight. You need the next honest move. And once you stop demanding certainty, you may discover that the clarity you were waiting for has been asking for participation all along. Chosen one, there is something important to say before we close. Maybe you did miss a door. Maybe you waited too long once. Maybe fear made a decision for you before you understood what fear was doing. That possibility does not mean everything is lost. One closed door does not prove your calling ended. Some people carry regret as if regret were discernment. They keep replaying what they should have done, believing that enough self-punishment will somehow recover the moment. It will not. The past cannot be edited. That is exactly why clarity matters now. You may be thinking, I should have known better. I should have moved sooner. I ignored too much. I wasted too much time. But shame cannot return you to yesterday. It can only make you less available to today. So, release the fantasy that healing requires you to become the person who never made the mistake. You only need to become the person who can see the pattern clearly enough not to keep repeating it. Remember the last mile blindness. Old survival reflexes can keep speaking after the danger that created them has passed. The work is not to hate those reflexes. The work is to notice when they are no longer telling the truth about the present. Now, give yourself one quiet moment. Sit as comfortably as you can. Let your breathing remain natural. You do not need to create a special feeling. Imagine one door in front of you, not a door to money, not a door to fame. Just one decision that has been waiting for an honest response. Do not force the door open. Do not imagine what is behind it. Simply notice what happens inside you when you admit that the decision is real. Now place a hand over your chest if that feels comfortable. Slow your breathing slightly. Ask yourself, what is the smallest truthful action I can take from here? Do not ask, what guarantees success? Do not ask, what removes every risk? Ask, what action would let you remain honest with yourself? Maybe the answer comes quickly. Maybe it does not. Either way, you have changed the question. You are no longer asking the future to promise you safety before you participate in it. This is the point where guilt starts losing its authority. You are not trying to recover every missed opportunity. You are learning how to become present for the next one. And if something has already closed, let it teach you without becoming your identity. Let regret become information. Let disappointment become wisdom. Then let the lesson finish. You are still here. There are still decisions ahead of you. There are still conversations you can have, boundaries you can set, and truthful steps you can take. So the words "almost too late" do not have to mean doom. They can mean something far more useful. They can mean this is the moment to stop letting indefinite hesitation become a permanent way of living. And there is one sentence I want you to carry out of this message. One sentence that changes the meaning of the entire warning. You were never being asked to see everything. You were being asked not to abandon yourself when the next honest step became visible. Chosen one. This is where the warning becomes a declaration. Almost too late does not mean God is standing over you with punishment. It means hesitation has a cost when it becomes a permanent pattern. You do not need another sign about everything. You do not need to understand the entire road. You need enough clarity for one faithful step. So release the need to know everything. Release the belief that fear is wisdom. Release the habit of calling, exhaustion, discernment, and hesitation, obedience. Say this with me if the words are true for you. I release the need to control every outcome. I release the belief that uncertainty means I am lost. I will not call fear wisdom simply because fear sounds careful. I can pause without disappearing. I can discern without demanding certainty. I can move without controlling what happens next. I choose the next faithful step. And when I say, God is crying, hear the image correctly. I am not claiming to know the literal emotional state of God. I am naming the heartbreak of love, watching someone come this far, become this strong, and then forget how much clarity they already carry. This is not condemnation, it is invitation. You have spent enough time believing that one wrong move could erase everything. The next step may not be dramatic. It may be quiet. It may be a conversation nobody sees. It may be a boundary that disappoints someone. It may be an application you finally send. But small does not mean insignificant. A faithful step can be small and still change the direction of a life. Remember what we uncovered. Fear can imitate caution. Avoidance can imitate patience. Mental noise can make clear guidance harder to use. None of that means you are doomed to miss what matters. It means awareness now gives you a choice, where habit once made the choice for you. So when the next honest step becomes visible, do not abandon yourself at the threshold. You do not need to feel fearless. You only need to be truthful enough to recognize what fear is trying to make you avoid. If this message gave language to something you have been living, write this declaration in the comments. My next step is clear. Let those words be more than a sentence. Let them become a reminder that clarity is not knowing everything. It is knowing enough to stop betraying what you already understand. And if someone you care about is standing at a threshold, share this message with them, not to tell them what decision to make. Share it so they remember they are allowed to choose from truth instead of fear. Chosen one. Clarity does not promise you everything, but without clarity, you can walk past almost anything. Protect yours. Honor it. And when the next honest step becomes visible, take it. You were never being asked to see the entire road. You were being asked not to abandon yourself at the threshold.